भी दीवाना तेरे गुन गाए जमाना तेरा बुलबुल भी दीवाना बोले कोयल को यारा मेरे अल्लाह
جمال الوجود بديع.
Living Islam, Narcissism, the psychological catchword of the 21st century. But what is narcissism? How does it corrupt the soul? And can it be treated and cured? Join Maulana Zahier Ahmed Raggie every Wednesday morning as he unpacks the topic of narcissism and enlightens us on the Islamic perspective of tackling this spiritual sickness. Radio Islam International, bringing you contemporary and pertinent psychological discussions.
أحب رضاه أحب لقاه يظل يجيء إلى.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Radio Islam International. You are listening to the program called You Are Loved. With us in studio, we have Maulana Zahier Ahmed Raggie. Maulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We take this opportunity of greeting our listeners on Radio Islam, Radio Al Ansar, and also those that have joined us live on the Ummahat platform.
Well, in our last discussion, we discussed about the entitled narcissists and codependence. The boundaries are very important. We also discussed about codependent children. Do what the parents want them to become to make the parents happy. Also, we discussed about teaching Islam and Quran with love and compassion. And if parents don't make enough effort teaching Islam, they will be accountable for it. Parents must also be respected and treated well. And it is not allowed for a Muslim to obey anyone if it is impermissible in Islam. We also discussed about children who expect parents to accept that they are involved in things that Islam forbids. And we discussed about boyfriends for daughters, sons that are gay, and they want parents to accept this. We also did a bit about the narcissistic statements like, I don't have a son or daughter anymore, or I wish I were dead. And towards the end, we did that they don't understand the psychological stress and damage that they put kids through. And they might never forgive their parents for putting them through this later. Yes, harsh physical and verbal discipline, creating dramas and deliberately displaying problematic and manipulative behavior, such as tantrums and rages, is wrong and forbidden in Islam. In Islam, parents are requested to talk calmly with their children, teenagers and adult children who have behaved badly or sinned, and advise them kindly. And what is the recommendation for this type of parenting style? Is counseling recommended, Ma?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Maulana, as you have correctly mentioned, in Islam, parents are requested to talk calmly with their children, calmly with teenagers, and even adult children who sometimes have behaved badly or even sinned, and advise them kindly. And this is not only a responsibility of parents, but anyone. Islam encourages us to always be calm, collective, kind when advising. If this doesn't work in a relationship between parents and children, and keep in mind that we are talking of how should we parent our children so that we do not develop in them some of the narcissistic disorders that we are talking of. So if this kind, calm way of dealing with children does not work, then before going into harsh treatments, the most important thing that we need to keep in mind here is that there is a fundamental issue in the parent-child relationship, and that needs to be resolved first. If your kind way of talking to your children does not help, it is an indication that there is a fundamental problem between the parent and child relationship, and this problem needs to be addressed first. Sometimes children believe that their parents are hypocrites for advising them to do what they themselves don't do, while others simply have no respect for their parents for various reasons. And sometimes some children don't take their parents seriously. Now, although the calm, kind, patient approach is an approach that is requested by Allah Ta'ala, it is a kind approach which is recommended in Islam, we do acknowledge that it does not always work. If the correct relationship dynamics and foundations are not in place. So there has to be a correct relationship between parent and child in order for the calm collective way to work. And if that does not work, then there is a problem. It only works with children who have emphatic children, or emphatic parents rather, or at least one compassionate, emphatic parent who is loving to the children. Now, we do know that there are many parents today, and in the free society that we live in and in the liberal society that we live in, many liberal parents, especially those that are endowed by Allah Ta'ala with wealth, who are wealthy, are also less likely to inflict physical abuse on their children, as it's usually enough sometimes for these parents to take away some of the material possessions that they provide to their children, such as the game consoles, your mobile phones, and sometimes even financial privileges, to get them improve their behavior. And this, we note that many parents do that when the children are not doing good, are not being obedient, not being respectful. Many parents who have provided their children some of the material benefits would discipline their children by taking away these things, taking away the phone, taking away the PlayStation, taking away some of the financial privileges. And they do this in order to improve the behavior of children. Many Muslims are also more likely to comply, unfortunately, in the times that we are living in, with Western laws regarding physical disciplining of children, and therefore they avoid it because we know what the laws are today. And we observe this in our institutions of learning, that this becomes a problem, that when you use physical abuse or when you use physical means to discipline children. And you also then have some parents who may not be as wealthy, who find other ways to discipline their children. Sometimes such as not ordering or not taking them for giving them the Friday night meal that you normally have with your children, and you take away some of the other things, not allowing them to go with their friends, not allowing them to go with their friends to sometimes watch a football match, since we are in the World Cup season now, or whatever other ways by which they do whatever they do to discipline children. However, if a parent is a high-level narcissist, and that's the topic that we are discussing, then physical abuse does occur. So you do find many parents, then eventually, if these approaches don't help, they also resort to physical abuse. Other parents will only see results when they shout, when they hit, when they create a drama, and using Allah's name in between, because that's the only style of parenting they know. They believe that their way of parenting will have a positive impact and will make their children appreciate them and see sense. So these are different ways by which parents would discipline their children. However, the narcissist parent, when he becomes frustrated, then he would even use physical abuse. And they often do this out of ignorance and habit, not knowing that hitting, and sometimes hitting in the way that is not advised in Islam, displeases Allah Ta'ala. For example, hitting over the face, etc. It is important for people to understand here that if a parent possesses very high level of narcissism, to the point that they are making everyone's life a living hell, then it can be impossible even to get them to go for counseling. Parents need to go for counseling if you have these traits, but many would refuse. Even if they go, you will find that they will storm out of the session and slam the door behind them if they are asked an uncomfortable question or hear something that they don't like. Naturally, such people who have these narcissistic traits would, barge out of the counseling session. And this is very normal behavior for some people who would rather die than unravel all their years of traumas since childhood. So many of these people had their own traumas in childhood. And when they are now displaying the way they were brought up, and if they are required now to change that and even go for counseling, you would find, firstly, they would refuse to go for counseling. Secondly, you would also find that if they happen to go, many of them will just barge out of that session because of being ashamed of some of their weaknesses being exposed. This makes them feel ashamed. It makes them feel worthless. It makes them hate themselves even more, and it destroys their ego and their sense of self. Now, mid-level narcissists, this was what we spoke about, very high-level narcissists, but mid-level narcissists may accept to go for counseling if they are comfortable with a counselor and if there's great benefit behind doing so, such as stopping their partner from divorcing them. However, very high-level narcissists would not even consider that they have a problem, and they would never even think of having something address this behavior of harshness in their parenting style. Narcissists will rarely seek counseling out of their own free will unless they feel their life has been destroyed and a doctor has sometimes recommended that they speak to a professional. Otherwise, they will go for marital counseling to sort out their issues rather than their behavior. So this type of counseling that you resort to is also important. If you have these narcissistic disorder traits, and therefore we call it a disorder, you need to treat that disorder. Just normal general marriage counseling does not help. And we did speak in the past, Maulana, that there were some people that were feeling that there's no need for counseling. No, there is. And there are professional people, and alhamdulillah, many Muslim professional counselors and therapists who address these issues from a Muslim point of view. And it is recommended that you go and seek professional help if your parenting style is such that results in very harsh ways of disciplining, where it leads to drama, chaos, hitting, abuse. There is a need for counseling. And also, you need to address the problem. You need to address the disorder. Just normal marital counseling does not help. And that's an important distinction that we need to have. So forcing or pressurizing a narcissist parent to go for counseling will only make them so much worse, and it's advised not to do this if they are uncomfortable with it. And this is also something that is important to keep in mind. To keep the peace, it's better that the children seek their own therapy and counseling so they can separate themselves from the behavior of their parents and learn how to effectively deal with them. So while sometimes some of these types of parents would not want the therapy, would not want to be counseled because they feel they don't need it, and sometimes to force them to go for that might cause more harm. And therefore, it is necessary that some children some children who are in this type of a home where this type of parenting takes place, then it is also advisable that you send these children must go for counseling. So to keep the peace in the home, it's better that the children seek their own therapy and counseling so they can separate themselves from the behavior of their parents and learn how to effectively deal with them. Because there are certain guidelines also that children need to observe in the approach of the respect that they have to observe for their children, especially when the trait, this unnatural style of parenting becomes second nature in a home. Dealing with them usually involves the continuation of stroking the ego of parents to keep the peace, but this time it's from an awakened mindset and won't be at the expense of their mental health. And their mental health is a problem, and therefore if they do not want to remedy that style of parenting, in order not to develop more the chain reaction of this behavior in that home, it's also necessary that we send some of the children to have the necessary counseling so that they are separating themselves from that type of behavior and they develop good, positive, healthy habits and traits in being able to deal with these type of things. Now, these narcissists are so advanced in their narcissism, they aren't able to seek positive help for themselves or even pray for themselves, because one is you need help, professional help, and you also need some spiritual help where you need to develop spirituality in you, and this needs to be done by you seeking Allah Ta'ala's help. So you also need to be praying for yourself if you are a parent that uses this style of parenting, as this narcissist understanding of who Allah is and Islam sometimes is also so corrupt. Hence why they use religion to justify bad attitudes and behavior. And to an extent, we did speak about this, and there is going to be more discussion on this, that how some of these narcissistic people who have these disorders use religion to support their behavior. And the advice to such people to help their narcissistic parents is to pray for them. Or they are so, fashioned in their style that even to give them some advice would just result in another drama, in another chaos, in another tantrum. And if they are unwilling to do that, then do not forget, as children and as siblings, pray for your parents who use this type of style of parenting. Pray for them as they hold that power as empath to understand the value of dua. You should understand the value of dua, and you are able to pray sincerely and properly, unlike some parents who may not be able to do that. People, we always underestimate the power of dua. We underestimate the power and the miracle of prayers that even healed the sick. And think back, you should never underestimate your power of dua. I will give some examples. Dua moved mountains. Dua split the moon. It split the sea. That's the power of dua. It's truly the best gift that people can give their parents to heal them. Praying for parents, even if they are narcissists, is a highly rewardable act of ibadah and worship.
Shimon, we have one question that is coming. Assalamu alaikum. How does a narcissistic parent cause social anxiety in a child?
Definitely it does. Definitely it does. And therefore, if the parent is unwilling to see his or her own weaknesses, then that child needs some treatment. That child needs some therapy. That child needs some counseling to prevent the social disorders that may result from that type of a parenting.
While we mentioned that healthy parenting involves discipline and authority, however, narcissistic parents perceive the parental authority they have as power that they can use to control everyone.
This is, and it's a severe form of toxic psychological manipulation. This authority and this power, narcissistic parents perceive their parental authority that they have as power, and they can cause control, they can use to control everyone around them. And it's a very severe form of social, psychological, toxic manipulation that extremely detrimental to children's spiritual well-being. For example, a parent may pretend to be very sick to make a child feel guilty or scared, and they may also drop hints about suicide when they are super upset. I might as well take my life. Now, children also grow up to believe that there must be a powerful parent present at home. Children know that there needs to be a powerful parent present at home. Such a parent who's able to keep everyone in line, and often grow up seeking the same type of relationship. You have codependent children who are manipulated and controlled by this parental power, this parental authority, rather than healthy protective authority. And there's a need for us to make a distinction. You need to have protective authority. A parent is a protective authority. A parent should not be an abusive authority. And this distinction is very, very crucial to have in the style that we parent. So rather than healthy protective authority, if we don't, it develops emotional issues in homes. It's a disconnect from deen at an early age. Experience eating disorders you will find in children that are prone to have this type of parenting, such eating disorders, or may even lose interest in things in life, things in the world, interest in sports or even schoolwork, interest in going madrasa. Keep in mind that even children's activities in sports, provided it is maintained in its right balance, is healthy. We should not think that a child, if it's not interested in all of that, then the child is fine. No. It allows lots of development in the child, in coordination, in a healthy mind. So these type of things are crucial, and it's important. And when this type of abusive authority is in a home, it can result in many social and psychological problems in a home, as you have just the question I had just asked, Morana. And you find that when innocent children misbehave and don't satisfy the individual needs of either one or both parents, if both are toxic in their own ways, then those children become victims of verbal, emotional, physical, religious, and spiritual abuse. So when innocent children misbehave and don't satisfy the desire and the wants of toxic parents, the children become victims of verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and even religious and spiritual abuse by such parents who show an outward form of religiosity, of deen, of spirituality, of piety, or which can lead to a very prompt and quick development of disorders and unfortunately, sometimes even depression and chronic depression. And before they know it, their parents have taken over their lives, including their choice of partners and many other choices. Sometimes in those children that grow up and get married, narcissistic parents even keep control of their children and their grandchildren. So it was reported, for example, and I found this so interesting. It was reported that Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, "Do not force your children to behave like you, culturally, obviously, not with regards to the practice of deen, but in a cultural and social way. Do not force your children to behave like you, for surely they have been created for a time which is different to your time." Subhanallah, what a beautiful quote. Do not force your children to behave like you. And again, I'm repeating, culturally, socially, for surely they have been created for a time which is different to your time. And this statement of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu is so profound. Everything we have, except our deeds, except our belongings, everything we have, except our deeds, belongs to Allah ta'ala, including our children, who are given to us as a blessing and as a trust rather than a possession. And Allah Ta'ala makes mention of this in the Quran. Al-malu wal-banun zinatul hayati dunya. That wealth and children are the adornment of this life. Wal-baqiyatu salihat khayrun inda rabbik thawaba wa khayrun amala. But the lasting good work has a better reward for you with your Allah and gives better grounds of hope. So wealth and children are the enjoyments of this worldly life, and the everlasting virtues are better with our Allah, both in rewards and in creating good hopes. Now this ayah also gives comfort to those who don't have wealth and children. You have sometimes some parents don't have, some couples don't have children. And this ayah also provides comfort for such people who don't have children, as the investment of their time, of those who don't have children, investment of their time in charitable deeds is perhaps better, highly rewardable, easier in Allah's eyes than dealing with wealth and raising children who may disappoint them and rebel when they are older. Therefore, if Allah hasn't blessed people with children, He doesn't want them to be sad about it, as it's what Allah Ta'ala knows is best for them. Children are only a blessing for us when they are righteous. Otherwise, they are a test. As Allah says, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةً. Your richness and your children are but a trial. So as for Allah, with Him, it is great reward. Now, righteous children are considered to be sadaqah ejariyah, an ongoing charity for parents after their death. As not only have they been raised to be moral, to love Allah, pass on Islamic knowledge, do good in the world, and even help others, they will continue to pray for their parents, remember them with doing good deeds on their behalf after they pass away. In fact, there is a very beautiful hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, wherein he narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, when someone dies, their action discontinues from them except three things: ongoing charity, leaving behind beneficial knowledge, and obviously the third, which is the topic of our discussion, a pious child who prays for them. So we as parents should be at every time cognizant of the way we parent our children, so that we develop in them those good habits that will help us when we are gone from this world. We leave behind children who will continue to do good deeds, to pray for us, and this can only happen in the way that we develop those habits in our children.
Chima, just a few comments that have come in. Assalamu alaikum. Generally, there is a narcissistic mother. What about the other parent? Can one lean towards the non-toxic parent?
Okay.
Then another. Sometimes my son is not speaking to his dad due to his dad being abusive and controlling when they were younger. My son is married but still feels his dad doesn't treat him like a man but still treats him like a child. And the last one. Assalamu alaikum. How to help an early teen boy who displays narcissist traits in changing his behavior. His father too has narcissist traits and is not interested in tarbiyah and said that the mother must take over the tarbiyah and all the developmental needs of all the children. The father says things like, don't look at how I am, but the son must be upright and well behaved. He says things like the mother must deal with all issues so that he does not become angry and beat the child or breaks things in the home. Would appreciate this question is addressed.
This is shifting responsibility, man. This father is actually shifting responsibility, and I think we spoke about this in our last week's discussion, that it's a joint responsibility. Parenting is a joint responsibility, and unfortunately, we outsource. Some parents, avoiding this responsibility, outsource it. Sometimes they outsource it to the next parent, and sometimes they outsource it to the teachers in the school, and they outsource it to the ustad in the madrasa. And this is shifting responsibility, and we will be questioned for that. And children are an amana in our hands. It's a trust by Allah Ta'ala. And we spoke about this, that if the father feels that he has a problem, he needs to address his problem. Shifting the responsibility is not resolving the problem. The parent needs counseling, the father, or whoever, in whichever side, they require the necessary professional help to manage their disorderly behavior, whether it's anger management or whatever. And again, I say, I've observed this, that many a times these people, when they go for counseling, they go for marriage counseling. And it's not always the marriage counseling that is going to help. You need to have professional help to address the disorder that you have. And this distinction is crucial in remedying and addressing the problem. The first question that you said, the leaning towards the one that is not displaying narcissistic traits. Again, it's the same thing, Maulana. Yes, it is encouraged that that leaning is natural. No one likes to be treated in an abusive way. So that leaning is natural. It will happen. However, it does cause later social problems where the child may feel that this is normal. And that child may develop the habit which has been asked by the third question, where you shift that responsibility.
Yeah.
And therefore, the whole concept of a family and a home and the objectives of a marriage, which we spoke of, and we're going to speak of that later, inshallah, again, has to be obtained and achieved and be present in every home. And a home is a joint venture. It's not the one must continue doing what they want to do and shift responsibility and moving away. That is not a healthy environment wherein children will grow. In fact, such homes are homes which develop narcissistic adults and teenagers.
Chiba, now raising children isn't something to be taken lightly in Islam, and the hadith shows us that the best way to raise a child is in a correct Islamic way, so that you may reap the fruits of your investments in them even after you pass away. This is according to the hadith that Manadid mentioned by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. If children aren't raised properly, they won't be practicing. Muslims won't pass on correct Islamic knowledge to their children and others, and also they won't be able to pray for you later.
Absolutely, Maulana, and Jazakumullah for those few questions, because those questions are just addressing what we are discussing. And I'll go back to the problematic parenting of codependent Muslim children. Problematic parenting of codependent Muslim children. And we've seen in many cases where Muslim parents sometimes use the Quranic verse. Raising children isn't something to be taken lightly in Islam. And this hadith that we have mentioned shows us that the best way to raise a child is in a correct Islamic way. so that you may reap the fruits of your investment in them even after you pass away. And if children aren't raised properly, they won't be practicing Muslims, won't pass on correct Islamic knowledge to their children or others, or even pray for you later. See, there's a question here. My husband took another wife and didn't tell us. My son found out via his friend, and he then sent me scholars' videos actually saying he didn't have to tell us. I feel like I'm a dog and my son hates Islam. Na'udhu billah. I think I don't recall, Marana, if I spoke about this, but I'm going to be addressing this, and that is the issue of secretly marrying. That's something that we need to keep in mind, that yes, you don't need permission of your wife to get married again, because she may refuse that permission. But not seeking permission does not mean you should not inform. There is a distinction between that. If you are a man enough to have the courage to marry another woman, then you should have the courage to inform the family that you are doing so. Because if you don't do that, there can be many problems later. And some of the problems may be problems relating to inheritance, etc. And therefore, we find there's grave warnings in our deen relating to not leaving behind the correct estate, etc. There is a case where at a funeral home where the man had passed on, another woman came with a child at the funeral home and said, I'm also his wife and this is also his child. One can imagine the chaos that can result in. So my advice to men is that yes, Islam allows you and allows us all as men to have more than one wife, up to 4. This excuse that I don't have to seek permission and I can do it in secret, Islam actually would discourage these type of secret marriages. If you have the courage to have another wife, have the courage to inform the family. There may be a little bit of drama at the time when you inform them, but at a later stage, that drama would be much less to manage than the drama that has been just mentioned in this question that the lady had asked. Yes, Maulana, can we carry on?
Gee, well, then we
So,
see that.
as we're talking about raising children, isn't something to be taken lightly in Islam. And this hadith shows us that the best way to raise a child is in a correct Islamic way. And also, so that you may reap the fruits of your investment in them even after you pass away. If children aren't raised properly, they won't be practicing Muslims. They won't pass on correct Islamic knowledge to their children and others, or even pray for you later. The ayah where Allah Ta'ala says, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفْ, do not make to make their children miserable and cause problems for them in their adult lives. In traditional homes, the narcissistic parent is usually supported by the codependent parent in the disciplining of their children. This is very similar to the question that was asked where, we outsourcing or we shifting that responsibility. So in traditional homes, the narcissistic parent is usually supported by the codependent parent in the disciplining of their children. So if the father is the narcissist and uses religion to control and discipline his children to avoid problems and conflicts at home, and that's exactly what was asked, Marana, the codependent mother will comply as even she fears her husband. And children are plagued by the constant fear, guilt, and obligation that they are subjected to live up to the standards of being good children whom their parents and Allah will approve of. Some children find it very difficult to be respectful to their parents and not say the oof to them when they were being treated badly and unfairly. And it stems from the question that was asked, which then makes them feel guilty as they are regularly told by their parents that they are committing a major sin by arguing, by answering back, showing irritation. Sometimes Fights are caused when they tell even their grandchildren that their parents aren't being good Muslims and that they should listen to them. Sometimes parents try to manipulate and control even the grandchildren, much to the distress of their parents, who find it unacceptable but don't know how to effectively deal with them without feeling they have transgressed Islamic parental rights. Mona, you want to mention something? Is there any questions or you want to conclude for today?
There's I think with the questions we've come to an end. We've seen that we just a reminder to the listeners that this is an open line, so the lines are open 011-854-1548, and if they want, they can WhatsApp us on 0727861548. So far, we don't have any questions.
Okay, so we want to conclude here. Or you want?
We can conclude for today. Inshallah, then we can carry on from next week.
There's some question that came here. My parents are toxic. I'm a grown man and happily married. I'm happier and more prosperous when I avoid my parents. Yes. So this is something that happens. Many complain about being disrespected by their parents in front of their own children, which causes their children to use it against them. They will often get angry when they see their parents attempt to brainwash or even take over their own children, as they don't want them to experience the same trauma that they went through, especially when it comes to some of the religious teachings. So these are things that does happen, and therefore the importance of this topic. We don't realize that some of our disorders result in a chain of reactions within our homes and the generations to follow. Like this person has said, I'm a grown man, I'm happily married. In fact, I'm happier and more prosperous when I avoid my parents. So I wouldn't encourage you to be avoiding your parents. Your parents did a lot for you. You should look at the positive things. And I'm sure if you search for the positive things, you will find many positive things. However, if there are those occasions and moments when it results in some drama, in a very respectful way, you may leave your parents' home and just walk away without showing any disrespect, without saying anything, and that would be a more healthier way. And make dua. We spoke about this. Dua is extremely important and extremely effective in these occasions when we see. There's another one. The emotional, verbal, mental, and physical abuse was too much to take on as baggage into another relationship. Yes, this happens, and that these are things that our community is going through. Our societies are going through these types of abuse and trauma, and that is again the reason why the importance of this topic and these discussions that we are having.
Well, another question that has come: how can I prevent my teen boy turning out as a narcissist? I think I did answer this question, that you need to find your problem out first. As we said, that many people are going for the normal marital counseling instead of going for the marital counseling. They need to first see what the problem is and go for the proper professional help first before coming there, and that's where you can prevent your teen boy also turning out as a narcissist. Then she says that I have asked these questions to others. They say that as a mother, I have to be the role model, and this is very difficult to do it alone.
Yes, it is difficult, and therefore it's a partnership. Parenting is a partnership between mother and father. Each one plays their respective roles, and this is extremely, extremely important for us, that we cannot shift this responsibility, this joint responsibility of developing our children into healthy, productive, pious, religious, responsible adults.
My last question that's coming, Marana, how do you respond to a parent who has a lot of negativity and negative responses to things we say?
Again, I say that in a nice way you can address it, but if it's not If it's too late, and if it is something that is ingrained in their habits, then make dua for them.
Well, Jazakallah for your time, much appreciated. Inshallah, we'll continue next week, Wednesday.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wrap it, pack it, fill it, close it, store it,